Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and the Commanders also selected Washington defensive back. I'm calling him defensive back for now because he's played literally everywhere in the secondary and has excelled at all areas. I project him to be a starting slot corner for us, and we're going to talk about that. Of course, we got to talk about his weaknesses and strengths. We're going to talk about some of his pro football focus grades. We're going to talk about his distribution of snaps and how versatile he is. You know, Ron Rivera and company love positional flex. We're going to talk about a lot of his advanced statistics. We're going to talk about his crazy athleticism and why he is arguably the most explosive corner in this draft, and statistically actually is based on how he tested and everything, man. We got to dive into how he fits for the Commanders. Does this mean that Kendall Fuller will get cut because of this? We're going to talk about how much money we would save if we were to cut Kendall Fuller, and why it would make more sense to cut Kendall Fuller than it probably even would than Chase Roulier, just based off of the money. Now, I was really excited about this Jartavius Quan Martin pick. I believe out of everybody that's on YouTube, all of the reporters, I've probably been the highest on Jartavius Quan Martin, even though my boy Louis T also mocked him to us as well in his mock draft. But I feel like I'm like one of the very few people that has absolutely no problem with taking him in the second round. The only reason I didn't do this video sooner was because I was still live streaming the entire second and third round, so I had to wait until we took Ricky Stromberg to go ahead and work on this video. But since I just recently watched all of the tape on Ricky Stromberg after we took him, I went ahead and knocked that video out first. Now we're going back to Jartavius Quan Martin, who's arguably one of the biggest steals in the draft, man. Now, you can argue we may have been able to trade back and still get the guy, but Ron Rivera, once they have their eyes on the player, they're taking him. These guys have a type, and he fits their type. And I'm really hyped up about this pick, I'm not gonna lie. So we're gonna dive into all of that and more, but before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you pull up to the rest of the draft live stream. I'm live streaming tomorrow/today. I mean, it's 2 a.m. but starting 11:30 a.m. the draft starts at 12 p.m. I'm gonna start 30 minutes before that. The live stream, we're gonna watch rounds 4 and 5 together, and if things get interesting, we'll continue to go further than that. We'll see, though. It just all depends. But yeah, man, make sure y'all stay tuned for all of the draft coverage. I'm gonna be working on film sessions for all of the players that we drafted. Again, non-channel members, the general public, will probably get like a 5 to 10 minute film session. The draft members, my channel members, my fault, we'll get like the 30 minutes to an hour long one. I'm sorry, it's 2 a.m. I'm tired. My throat is killing me from talking so much for the past like 7 hours straight, but I gotta keep the content going, man. So I really appreciate y'all, and without further ado, let's get to it, man. Alright, so first of all, like I said earlier, man, I don't think there's a single Commanders fan, Commanders analyst out there that's higher on Quan Martin than I am. Now, I did have us mocked to get him in the third round of this draft, but I have no problems taking him second because this is a guy that fills in so many needs for us and fills in a direct need as a direct upgrade over Bobby McCain in every way. As a free safety, as a slot corner, which again, I think he projects to play slot corner the most for this defense, and we're going to talk about why, where he fits in, where Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, Kendall Fuller, Cameron Curl, Derek Forrest, all of those guys fit in, where he fits in with all of that. That's why I feel like he's a starting slot corner. But either way, man, I love this guy. You could argue it was between him and Brian Branch as the best slot corners in this entire draft, but Quan Martin is easily the more athletic guy. Brian Branch is the guy that comes from the SEC, played for Alabama, has all of the experience in the world, but Quan Martin has a higher ceiling just based off of his athleticism and potential alone. We're going to get to that later, man. I'm really excited. First of all, we have a couple of reviews from some draft analysts. You have DP Brugler, who said, quote, Martin needs to become a better finisher, but he is an outstanding athlete with cover skills, tackling attitude, and above average football character. Though he offers experience across the secondary, he's best suited inside as a nickel defender, and I agree with some of that for sure, especially the nickel defender part. Then Robert Griffin tweeted, Jartavius Martin is a physical defender who would make Sean Taylor proud. He had 14 pass deflections, 3 interceptions, and forced 2 fumbles. The Commanders are hell-bent on getting their secondary to match the player their D-line. Love it. And that's a good point, man. Our D-line has been elite for a while now, and you can argue that with the 2 picks that we made in this draft so far, well, before Ricky Stromberg, that now this secondary is probably almost to the same level as the defensive line. Probably you could rank maybe defensive line 1A, wide receiver 1B, and secondary a close third is our best position groups on this team easily, man. It gets really serious out there. Now, running backs might be a close fourth to all of that, but out of the way, the secondary is elite, and I wouldn't be surprised if the secondary fights his way up, because iron sharpens iron. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, though, but iron sharpens iron. This elite secondary going against this receiver group is going to be really fun. Another review, Lake Lewis, man, shouts out to him. He does great work as well. Martin is another safe, good pick for the Commanders. He's a strong nickel that the team needed, but I'm surprised they didn't take much on the O-line. It's apparent the coaches like the O-line talent in place more than we thought. We're going to get to that later, too. Is this Eric Bieniemy's ego, or does he just not have say in what's going on around here like we thought he did? We're going to get to that. And then Shay P. Hallam said, Jartavius Martin is my S3, safety 3. Good athlete. I mean, that's very underrated. He's more than a good athlete who moves sideline to sideline well, takes good angles and flashes ball skills, successful in 2 deep looks, struggle when manned up with defenders, instincts on space and need work, and a bit raw. And it's just weird that all of those reviews I just read, those sound like different people the way everybody describes somebody. Like, it doesn't sound like we were all talking about the same person. So the way that people viewed his tape is a little interesting because it's kind of all over the place. But I'm going to tell you right now, again, you can argue he was 1B to the Brian Branch 1A as the best slot cornerback nickel in this entire draft. 966 snaps in the slot over his career. He earned a 91 grade in run defense per Pro Football Focus. And if you just go look at the highlights, man, he's one of the most impressive guys you're going to watch. We drafted 2 playmakers to start off this draft. They both happen to be on the defensive side of the ball, but we have a real problem with making plays on the defensive side of the ball. We've figured it out on offense quite a bit, and I think Eric Bieniemy is going to elevate that even beyond what it already was. We've had a top 5, top 10 defense, arguably number 1 in certain statistics in a lot of different ways for the past couple of seasons, but we've never been a turnover team. We've been bottom 5 in creating turnovers for a while now, and that's why Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin immediately helped this team because they're both playmakers. Now, Quan Martin isn't as much of a playmaker as Emmanuel Forbes as far as converting things into interceptions and pick sixes and things like that, but nobody in this draft is. Emmanuel Forbes is the best at that. Again, he has elite traits all across the board. The Bryce Young of the cornerbacks, arguably the best, the most elite traits, arguably the best tape. You just worry about his weight and that's it. Whereas Quan Martin isn't far behind him, and that's a compliment to Quan Martin. But Mark Bullock brought up a good point. Through 1 quarter of Jartavius Martin's study, just watching 1 game, 1 quarter, he's seen him play deep safety, man-to-man in the slot, man-to-man versus a tight end, motion with the slot before sinking back to a deep half in a T2 invert. He is very versatile. So we're going to take a look at like his snap counts at different positions. But I like this brought up because it shows how much he switches between positions, how quickly he does it within just a single quarter. This is not like he played a bunch of slot one game and then a bunch of safety another game, then in the box another game. No, within the same drive, within the same single quarter, he's moving all around the field, motioning around. He's lined up one place right before the snap and then ends up somewhere else post snap to confuse the quarterback. You can use him in every way possible. Positional flex, God, man, I'm telling you, his alignment from last year, 2022 alone, 177 snaps as a deep safety, 44 snaps in the box, 75 snaps as the wide out outside corner, and 493 snaps in the slot. Of course, the 493 snaps in the slot is his best position. That's the one he has the most experience with. That's the one I project him to do for us. But again, 177 snaps as deep safety, 44 in the box, and 75 as an outside corner is also very impressive, and that shows the versatility. Also, Jartavius Martin is just clearly a Ron Rivera guy, not even just because of the positional flex, but all 3 guys that we drafted so far in this draft all had top 30 visits with the team. I believe Emmanuel Forbes was like April 9th, and then Jartavius Martin was like April 18th when he came to Ashburn, and then Ricky Stromberg was April 19th. Literally in order of visits, Emmanuel Forbes, then Quan Martin, and Ricky Stromberg is actually really interesting. And they just clearly have a type. Positional flex, athletic. You don't have to necessarily be athletic all the way around in every potential statistic, every possible metric of athleticism, but you at the very least got to be elite at something. But luckily for us, Ricky Stromberg, Emmanuel Forbes, and Quan Martin are just generally really elite athletes and have elite athletic traits in more than one metric at least, oftentimes 2 or 3. Now also new Commanders defensive back Jartavius Martin had a 73.2 overall grade, which isn't great, but he had a 91 run defense grade and a 90.1 tackling grade. That's huge, man. Emmanuel Forbes, even with his low his weight is, steps up big time in the run game, and Quan Martin isn't afraid to mix it up there as well. That's why we avoided guys like Christian Gonzalez. We went Emmanuel Forbes over Deonte Banks because Deonte Banks has greater ball skills and attacks the ball well, pinpoints the ball, and converts things into interceptions rather than just being a really good coverage guy like Deonte Banks is. He's a playmaker compared to Deonte Banks, who's not much of a playmaker. And then the reason that we like both of these guys over like a Christian Gonzalez is because they are also strong contributors in the run game, very well-rounded receivers. And then also he had an 81 pass rush grade, which is really interesting. But sadly, he only had a 66 coverage grade, which is really interesting because I feel like that's what he's going to be doing the most. But I mean, from what I see on tape, I kind of disagree with that grade. I think he's excellent in coverage, but I also think he's excellent against the run as well, and his tackling, everything is sound, man. I love it. And so it's really interesting because we went defensive back first and second round. I mean, y'all know that by now, but how much sense does that make? I mean, again, like I said earlier, are we trying to get the DB group to catch up to the defensive line? And then linebacker was just like, we'll figure it out later. I mean, that's a strategy. One of the best defensive lines, arguably the best defensive line in football. And if this secondary is going to be as elite as I think it potentially could be, top 5, top 10, linebacker is not that much of a worry. And we may still find a guy later in the draft with some tools, with a high ceiling, preferably a bigger guy that's like more of a Mike, whereas Jamin Davis and Cody Barton are sideline to sideline speed, will linebacker type of guys, just as far as like specialization and making sure we have guys that can do different things rather than all having the same guy just basically copy and paste it throughout the entire linebacker group. Jamin Davis, Cody Barton, and Khalid Hudson arguably, well, more than likely, our top 3 linebackers on the depth chart right now, all fit the same profile of struggles against the run, though improving, and they're more so coverage will linebacker type of guys. So it would be nice to get a different type of guy, like a 6'4", 240 type of guy somewhere later. We'll see how it ends up going, but either way, we only use one linebacker on the field at times. We're more likely to have 5 defensive linemen and a third safety out there at the same time rather than running 2 linebackers, definitely more than running 3. Again, there were times last season when our defense was still playing at a top 5, top 10 level, and Jamin Davis was the only linebacker on the field quite a bit of the time. So linebacker is not a big need, especially when your secondary is potentially as elite as I think it could be, and our defensive line is elite as it is. And then just to let you know, man, go ahead and when you look up Jartavius Martin's RAS score, go ahead and change that thing to cornerback. Go ahead and change it to cornerback because he's going to play slot corner. Now, when you look at it as a free safety, he's still a really good athlete, still elite. When you look at it as a strong safety, he's still an elite athlete. But when you change it to corner, which is what he's going to be, it's a whole different level. He has a 9.86 RAS score. His explosion is elite. His vertical is arguably the best of all time for a corner, 9.99 percentile. So maybe 1 or 2 other guys in the history of NFL has had a better vertical than him. So he's extremely explosive. We're not just talking about very explosive. We're talking about arguably the most explosive corner in the NFL when he gets there. Like, it's that level. So whenever he diagnoses a play, as far as getting there to be able to break on the ball, recovery speed, all of that type of stuff, he's got all of it. Then he has elite speed as well, because at 194 pounds, running a 4.46 is not bad. But then again, when we're talking about explosive and when we're talking about quickness more than speed, which one matters the most? I prefer my guys quick. Now, you prefer speed if he's running down the field as far as trying to recover, if somebody's trying to beat him deep. But as far as anything underneath, you prefer the explosion, and you prefer that 20-yard split and that 10-yard split right there that are extremely elite, and in the 9.7 percentiles or higher. The 10-yard split is at the 9.96. So again, he's very explosive, he's very quick, and arguably that's more important than speed at the end of the day. So this guy, man, he has it all. And I don't know why he didn't test for agility, but on tape he has great hips and he's very agile, so I'm not worried about that at all. People trying to change directions, put double moves on him, he's good to go, man. And so I'm thinking, does Quan Martin finally break our second round curse? Because we've had a second round curse for a while now, even though I think Samuel Cosme is going to end up being an all-pro guard once he really focuses on only being that. And I think Fedarian Mathis, if he didn't get hurt, would have balled out last year. But at the same time, it's kind of bittersweet because if Fedarian Mathis didn't get hurt, we wouldn't have John Ridgway. Now we have both, so that's really cool, and I think both of those guys are going to end up working out. And I also think that Quan Martin is going to ball out because I love him. I absolutely love Quan Martin. Arguably my favorite pick of the draft as far as value and like somebody we really needed, because again, at the very least, he's a better Bobby McCain in every way possible. And a lot of people want to act like Bobby McCain was just so sorry, and I wouldn't say he was great, but there was a hole there when he left. Like, people are acting like after Bobby McCain left, oh, we're good, we don't need to replace him because he wasn't providing much at all anyway type of thing. But no, there was a reason he was getting as much playing time as he was in our secondary. So with him gone, we needed to replace him, and thank goodness we replaced him with a guy that's an obvious upgrade over him in every way, especially in the slot and especially against the run and as a tackler and everything else, man. I love it. And then of course Chris Sims, love him. He tweeted, yeah, mofo, one of my man crushes in the draft. The Commanders got one of the biggest ballers in the draft. Jartavius Martin is my favorite nickel free safety type. He is a psycho in a good way. I love it. Which takes me to the point. I don't know if people noticed, but this is the second year in a row that the Commanders have taken Chris Sims's #1 safety in the class. We did it last year with Percy Butler in the 4th round, his favorite free safety in the class at the very least, and Quan Martin was his favorite safety period in the class, literally his #1 safety, and we were able to get him in the 2nd round. So as far as Chris Sims is concerned, the Commanders are killing it in the draft as far as DBs go. Now, he said Emmanuel Forbes wasn't necessarily his type, but he knows, he saw the tape, that he admitted that, I mean, he's elite at everything else. It's just the lack of size, the lack of weight that concerns him, which is pretty much a lot of people's opinions. But he compared him to Tariq Woolen of the Seahawks. So, I mean, that's a pretty good compliment. Even though Tariq Woolen was a late round draft pick, the way he balled out, nobody's worried about that anymore. And if Emmanuel Forbes can be that and potentially even better because he's more athletic, I mean, that's going to be insane. But again, Chris Sims loves the Percy Butler pick last year and the Quan Martin pick this year. We just keep taking his favorite safety in the draft class 2 years in a row. And now also, I want to point out the fact that Devon Witherspoon, you could easily say, was the best DB at Illinois, but Quan Martin, you could easily say, was the second best DB at Illinois. And then you can also argue that Illinois had the best DB group in the entire college football. So second best DB in the best DB group in college football, arguably, that is very noteworthy and important, man. This guy was serious, and they were going out there against Big Ten competition, so it wasn't sweet. You know what I'm saying? So these guys, man, they put in pain and they balled out. Man, that was a really good secondary. I know Illinois is sad to see all of those guys go, man. I know they are. And also, now that we have Emmanuel Forbes, Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St-Juste, Quan Martin, just to name a few in the cornerback group, are we Benjamin St-Juste injury proof now? We're going to talk about whether Kendall Fuller is on the bench or whatever. We're going to talk about that soon. But now, just assuming that Benjamin St-Juste gets hurt, you have Kendall Fuller on one side, Emmanuel Forbes on the other, and then Quan Martin as your slot. Because, I mean, I love Benjamin St-Juste, but I don't want to depend on him for a full 17-game season. So until we can, you just got to make sure you have that backup plan in place. But moving on, does this mean Fuller's on the bench? Because when everybody's fully healthy, I want Benjamin St-Juste covering the DK Metcalfs. I want him covering the AJ Browns, the Justin Jeffersons, the bigger guys, the Keenan Allens, the Mike Evans, and things like that. But I want Emmanuel Forbes by far on the Devonta Smiths, Brandon Cooks that just got brought over to the Cowboys, which I feel like is a really underrated free agency move by the Cowboys this past season. But all of the small shifty receivers, you saw the Giants went and got, I believe, Jalen Hyatt. Oh yeah, Emmanuel Forbes is following him all day. But then in the slot, I mean, I wouldn't move Kendall Fuller back to the slot. Last time we saw him in the slot for the Commanders, at least most recently since 2020, he has not been good. He's been way better outside. He was great in the slot in 2017 before we traded him to the Chiefs. I don't know what happened when he went to the Chiefs and then came back to us. He just lost his slot powers. But ever since we've seen him back on the Commanders since going to the Chiefs, he's been bad in the slot. I prefer him outside. So how does this work? Because Quan Martin is obviously our starting slot corner. There's no way Kendall Fuller is starting over Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes, either of those guys. So is he part of the rotation? When does he touch the field? And at this point, does that mean we just cut him to save $8.5 million? That's a lot of money, man. You can cut Kendall Fuller right now and save a little over $8.5 million of cap space. And then do you take that money to pay Cameron Curl long term? I was hearing reports that weeks ago, months ago, that one of our offseason priorities is to give Cameron Curl a long-term contract, but we're going to wait until new ownership comes in to do that. So once the team officially gets handed over from Dan Snyder to Josh Harrison Company, Magic Johnson, all of those guys, Cameron Curl probably is the main priority to get paid. But as of right now, before we cut Andrew Norwell, before Logan Thomas, Chase Roulier gets contracts restructured or cut, whatever it ends up being, we don't have enough money to pay our rookie class right now. Like, all of these guys that we've drafted so far, we can't pay them. We only have like $2-something million in cap space. You need at least 7 to usually pay your rookie class. So we got to cut Kendall Fuller just to help make ends meet at this point, and then maybe some of that money can go to Cameron Curl if we go that way. But ideally, if we can find another way to make cap space, cut Andrew Norwell, who Ron Rivera has already said is out of the running for starting at left guard. So why is he even still here today? I don't get it. And then you can restructure Charles Leno, Logan Thomas, Chase Roulier. They got to give us some money back, especially Logan Thomas and Chase Roulier. Logan Thomas doesn't look like himself. And Chase Roulier, if you're going to play half the season, you need to give us half of that contract back. I feel like, in my opinion, sounds like it's only fair to me. And then we can use that money to pay our rookie class and to give Cameron Curl his long-term money and still be able to keep Kendall Fuller in the rotation, because like I already said previously, Benjamin St-Juste, you don't really even expect him to play a 17-game season for what I've seen so far. So you would like to have Kendall Fuller still on roster just in case Benjamin St-Juste gets hurt. I'm really excited about what he can do. I know for a fact he's a day one starter, and it's interesting that we went cornerback back-to-back, well, defensive back in general back-to-back, but it seems quite necessary. But my point was earlier, iron sharpens iron, bro, and this receiver group is elite and arguably the most underrated in the entire NFL. This secondary going against Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, along with anybody else that we add, and De'Ami Brown, I still believe in him as well. Iron sharpens iron, man. They're going to make this secondary so great. Emmanuel Forbes is going to have to cover Terry McLaurin one-on-one in practice constantly. Jahan Dotson, all of these guys. That's going to make him better. It's going to make Quan Martin better. It's going to make everybody better every day. But at the same time, this secondary is now officially athletic. That was our main problem. Benjamin St-Juste was long and had good change of direction skills, good hips. He wasn't fast. Kendall Fuller, one of the smartest corners in the NFL, not fast at all. Actually quite slow. I feel like I may even be faster than Kendall Fuller at this point. We have had no speed. Bobby McCain wasn't very fast. We have speed in the secondary, but as far as corners go, it's kind of ugly. Danny Johnson, love him, but not very fast either. No recovery speed. So now that we've officially added elite speed and athleticism to this cornerback group, that's going to make things really interesting for the Commanders, because at first in practice our wide receiver group was just simply more athletic than the other guys. They can beat them with that. But with this secondary group now, with Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin added to it, this much faster, this much quicker, this much more explosive and athletic, that's going to challenge Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel to reach deeper into their bags, because you're not just going to win by being faster than the guy in front of you. You're no longer automatically faster than the guy that's covering you now. They used to be. For the past couple of years, they have been. I mean, I guess you could kind of include William Jackson, but that's why William Jackson was usually looking like our best corner in practices like training camp and things like that, simply just because he was fast enough to keep up with those guys and everybody else wasn't. Now that we have two guys that can, again, that's going to force Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel to reach deeper within themselves to work on technician type of stuff, route running type of stuff, nuanced things, because being faster is not just simply going to work anymore. You're no longer necessarily automatically faster than the guy covering you, so you better get better in a different way. So iron is gonna sharpen iron, and I really like that. I feel like that's an additional benefit that people aren't thinking about. Our receiver group is gonna make the secondary better, but don't don't doubt the fact that this secondary is going to make this receiving group better, and I think that this secondary will potentially be elite. Also, I think it's really interesting that we hired Eric Bieniemy as not only our offensive coordinator, but our assistant head coach as well. And then Ron Rivera was talking about all of this say that he had, and then we go DB first and second round with all of that great offensive talent in the first and second round. So I don't know if it's just because Bieniemy is arrogant, has a big ego, and thinks that, oh, give me this O-line, I can ball out with this. We can score 30 points per game with this. You don't even have to prioritize offensive line. I'm Eric Bieniemy. Give me whatever. I'm going to make it work. I don't know if it's that or if Ron Rivera is just trying to keep him down so that where he doesn't feel like he's already getting a big head and taking over as the head coach or something. I really don't get it. Because even Ricky Stromberg, I'm not sure if he's an Eric Bieniemy guy or not, but he's already being attached to Travell Wharton, who's our assistant offensive lines coach right now. But John Comm already alluded to the fact that he's going to end up getting promoted as our official offensive lines coach. But the attachment is there between the offensive lines coach and Ricky Stromberg. Did Eric Bieniemy have much of a say in that? At this point, I don't feel like any pick we've made has had an Eric Bieniemy opinion in it yet. So this is a really interesting situation. But some people out there are comparing Emmanuel Forbes to potentially a better Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. I'll take that. And a lot of people are comparing Quan Martin to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And I love that. If that's what we drafted, it's over with. I'm telling you, it's dangerous for the rest of the NFC East. Is dangerous for everybody with an elite defensive line, arguably the best in the NFL, and now a potentially elite secondary along with it. It is unfair. So I don't care what we're talking about. What I've seen on film, I don't care what everybody else is saying. So far, what I've seen on film, he has outside slot and free safety experience, but I feel like he's going to start in the slot. He's an explosive athlete, elite athlete, arguably the most explosive corner in the NFL just based off of his vertical. He's a great tackler. He has range and instincts, and then he can also play some special teams for you if you want him to. I love it. So again, I want to ask you at the end of this video, Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, Jartavius Martin, Cameron Curl, Derek Forrest, you can throw Jeremy Reeves in there if you want to as well, is a top what secondary in the league? Let me know that in the comment section. But before we get out of here, also, I don't think people notice, there were heavy rumors, trustworthy rumors and reports going around that when we were at 47, we were trying to trade up to that 32nd pick that the Steelers had to start off the second round of the draft. And when we got to the point we were at 47, Hendon Hooker was available. At first, we were thinking, okay, maybe we were trying to trade up for Hendon Hooker. He was there at 47. We didn't take him. So then I'm like, has nobody else thought about the fact that maybe we were trying to trade up to 32 to get Will Levis, just like another team did? Who ended up doing that? I forgot. Like the Titans, I think, or something like that. So did we just dodge a Will Levis bullet? If the Steelers were willing to give us a trade value package, well, we're willing to accept one that we were okay with, would we have ended up at the 32nd overall pick and taken Will Levis instead of my boy Quan Martin? It sounds like it, because again, we were trying very hard to get up to that 32nd pick from the Steelers, but it was reported that the Steelers were asking for too much. Hendon Hooker, we assumed, was the guy. He was there at 47. We didn't take him. What does that leave us? Will Levis. That's it, man. I'm scared. I'm really scared, but I'm glad we dodged that bullet. But Rivera, I got my eye on y'all guys, because if that was true and y'all were really trying to get Will Levis, you're tripping. And then, speaking of Will Levis, now that he's on the Titans, my boy Malik Willis. Hey, man. Say, man. Talk to me, Titans. Malik Willis for a 6th round pick? Hey, man. Why not? Please. Especially if we don't end up getting Dorian Thompson-Robinson like in the 5th or 6th round. I'll send a 6th round pick for Malik Willis any day. Just elite talent there, even if you don't want him to play quarterback anymore. Whatever you do, just get Malik Willis in the building. I'm biased, though. He's a Westlake alumni. Y'all already know, man. Cam Newton, Adam Pac-Man Jones, AJ Terrell, and Malik Willis. Same high school, everything. So I root for those guys like nobody's business. Those are my guys right there. And I would just love to have a Westlake guy on the Commanders. But it is what it is, man. Let me know how you feel about everything I discussed in this video, including the Malik Willis thing, the Will Levis thing. And of course, most importantly, how do you feel about Quan Martin, this pick, when we took him? Do you feel like it was a reach? Do you feel like it was a steal? Talk about everything I talked about. How do you feel about this pick overall? And dive into everything that you can in the comment section. I will be there to read and reply. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything, man. I really appreciate y'all. So much content I'm coming out with for y'all. So stay tuned, man. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.